Hi friends and professional, how are you? Hope you are doing well. So as you are aware that we are discussing the PMBOK version 7 and the 12 principle which recently introduced in that. Today specifically we are discussing the 12th principle, that is change. Now this 12 principles is not in a chronological order. There is no kind of ranking. It's a kind of you can use parallelly or it's not in a sequential order. Let's discuss the change management, how the change is impacting the project, what are the ways by which the change can be helpful, and it's not just your project change but the mindset of the people is also equally important. So let's understand the change principle. Are you ready? Let's begin. So, as you are aware that change is something which is constantly happening in the project environment. If it's not changing, that we are not call it a project, right? So it's temporary endeavor project. That's why we call it temporary, because it's finally changed from one stage to another stage. But let's understand the simplified example of the change. So what is the change? So in the project management or a change management, there are two different domain in which a little bit skill set are vary. Let's understand, like in your actual state or what we call a status quo, there is some transition happen, what we call a transition phase, and you can achieve the target state or what we call a future state. So from current state to the future state, it's a journey through the transition phase, that is the change happening, right? Now in a project environment, it is very technical that how you're going to achieve the desired output. We are following on that. But the change management, it's something bigger thing on kind of overlapping the project management, where the organization transformation, the change of the mindset or the entire transformation of the organizations happen. Let's understand in detail about the change in the project management, how it's correlate. So as you see over here, there is a project management where there is a 5 different states like initiation, planning, monitoring, control, execution, and close. But in a project, the counterpart, that is the change management, where you have to prepare for the change, manage the change, how you're going to manage that, the planning, then manage the change, the execution, and finally closing the change, or what we call sustain the plan. Or throughout this there is a reinforcing the change. So there is integrations for successful delivery. So every human being are very much sometimes they are want to live in a comfort zone. They don't want it to adopt the changes because there is uncertainty to them are always there in side their mind, so they are restrain the change. So how you can give them a kind of assurance to accommodate, how they become a change catalyst? For that, there is a different models are there, how you're going to do that kind of change management, that what we are going to discuss in this model. So there are 3 phases of the change management. Different methodologies are there. The first phase of the change management is how you are going to approach them for the change, in which you define the change, then you prepare plan for that change. The second phase of the change management, what we call managing the change, where executions are take place, where you can define in detail out and assign the responsibility, communicate properly to each and everyone involved. So that is managing the change. And the third stage, what we called sustain the change. So change should not be kind of backfire to the organization. So that is how you can sustain that particular change, and that is a model where you have to develop the awareness, desire for the change, then knowledge, ability, and finally reinforce. So this is the particular concept where we are going to develop the change management. So ADKAR is a model where A stands for awareness, where you have to aware of the change, then your D stand for how you can make everyone on board to achieve that particular change that is a desire, and finally the knowledge that what are the things required for the change, the best practices, tools and techniques and all that. So this particular three component that are enablement zone when you prepare your organization for the transformation, and the second tool that is your ability when you develop that ability for the change, and finally reinforce that change where you have to communicate frequently with the relevant stakeholder to give them assurance that change is good for them. So that is an engagement zone. So that is an enablement zone and the engagement zone for achieving that change. So let's simplify this. A stands for your awareness for the need for the change. You have to understand your organization that why it's required for the change, what are the need for the change, a gap analysis. There are many trigger points that force you, compel you for the change, but you have to develop that kind of awareness in your organization, and then you have to convince for desire to support for the change the team that they what's there into them for the change, means why they are changing, what's they are getting if they got means adopt that change. So that mindset that you have to convey in clearly to each and everyone. And finally knowledge of the how to change. You have to develop some tools and techniques and help them with the support structure for they can go into the change. And finally you have to develop the ability to for the determined skill set for and behavior skill set so that they can do this particular change. And finally reinforce the change. It's your communication strategy and how you can make this thing snail so strongly inside the each and every one involved, how the stakeholders are reinforced with to make the change happen. So this is the ADKAR model that enable the change. So ADKAR model, there are different project management methodology as we had discussed in the tailoring principles, that you not need to blindly follow the each and every processes, but like if you are following the waterfall approach where the sequential things are there, where you do the things in a sequential, where how ADKAR model can apply on that parameter. So you can prepare in a planning stage only the awareness, then desire for change, the knowledge, and in execution you implement the ability, and finally release and reinforce. So like in agile model there are different sprints, so at every sprint you have to involve the enablement zone, that is your ability, and reinforce. And during the planning of that particular sprint you have that ADR, that is awareness, desire and knowledge session. So likewise you can implement the iterative project lifecycle with the change. And finally PDCA, that is dimming cycle of plan, do, act, check and act. So in a planning stage you have that awareness of the ADKAR model. Then in a do you have the remaining three, that is desire and knowledge and ability to develop. And then in a check there is a reinforcing, and again the act you have to involve with all these three ADR, that is awareness, desire and knowledge, ADK cycle. So this is how you can implement this based on the different project life cycle you adopting. And finally ADKAR model is project people change at different pace, right? So it's not necessary that people A, but the person A, how the pace in which he might get that particular level of change in the after Q5. But if you check the growth of the person B, he get that state of ADQR in a different time zone. The person C start late, then person D it start after the Q3, and the person E is get this change more in very early stage of his career or in the project duration. So this pace of the change in a different person to person is very, as I told you that life cycle is also where is the change model. So this all related how you're going to implement this particular change, and that related to the change management principles that specifically for the organization concern. PMBOK7 summarize the change is it should go with the structured approach. You should not go in a haphazard manner. You should plan well before. Then change can originate from external or internal sources, so that are many trigger points that enable that particular change. And enabling changes, sometimes you should not try to control or restrain from the change, because it anyways going to be happen. So instead of try to restrain the change, one should try to incorporate the change in a way kind of environment where there is people support for that particular change. And finally, attempting too much change in the small time zone may leads to a change resistance. So you should not adopt a big bang approach in which we are trying to adopt all changes in a one go. We should go with incremental approach or ad hoc approach. Incremental is the best, where you can small and little steps you are taking for correction and change in a proper time duration. And final, stakeholders engagement in the motivation approach help in change adoption. So you should have a team who is supporting you for adopting the change. So this is all about the change management. I hope you understood it very well. If you have any concern or comments or feedback, you can write in the comment section. For any more updates, stay tuned for next sessions. Thank you very much.